Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Today I want to pick up where we left off a couple of weeks ago with the backdrop here at Tye River. So the first thing I want to do is just bring you up to date on a couple of things as far as how to do the backdrop, how to spackle those wall joints and cover those screw heads. And then I'll go ahead and we'll do the painting and get that done. I'm not going to bore you by showing you how I paint, but I will show you what I used. And then we'll get into actually doing the photo backdrop. I'll show you how I did it and how to apply it and get the best results. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, before I go on, I want to take a second to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Also, don't forget, give us a thumbs up at the end of the video if you enjoyed it. And that way it helps to promote the channel on YouTube. Thanks now. Now, first an update. Last time I mentioned that the joint compound here felt a bit stiff. And as it turned out, it was. What I discovered was that it had sat down here in the basement long enough that most of the moisture had migrated down to the bottom of the container. And when I stirred it, I apparently just stirred the uppermost portion. And so I was just stirring up the dry portion and applying that. Now, as it turned out, it worked out just fine. It dried without any problem, and I was able to sand it and get a nice smooth finish. But so in the future, and for all of you, make sure that you do a very complete stir from a new bucket. Make sure you get way down into the bottom, turn it over. If it's still dry, don't be afraid, add a little bit of water. Don't add a lot to start, just a little, and I'll leave it up to you to decide what a little is. A few tablespoons maybe, and get it stirred in and get it to where it's back to the consistency where it's easily worked and used on your model railroad. Now, another thing, somebody mentioned, I think, keep a bucket of water handy. And I think that's a very good idea because it gives you some place where you can clean off your tools during the application of the joint compound. Another thing I keep handy is a large sponge like this. Now, this one was originally this big. I cut it in half because you don't need this, the full size, but it is great. You can dip it in the water, squeeze it out, and then rub the dried joint compound. And what that will do is it will smooth it down, take off that surface, rougher surface layer, and that will give you a real smooth finish when you're done. You don't want to slop it on, just moisten it enough to just take off the top coat of the plaster or the joint compound and smooth it down. And that'll be really good. Now, as far as sanding, I didn't take any video of this because it's pretty straightforward. Now, a lot of people might be tempted to use a simple sanding block like this with sandpaper. Avoid doing that because these tend to get clogged up really fast and it gets to be frustrating. What I prefer to use is this device right here. And what this is, you can see it's a piece of masonite with a handle attached to it and a couple of clamps, one at each end, to hold this wire, this fiberglass mesh screen that's embedded with abrasive. Now, you can buy that. I picked these up at Lowe's recently, and so I picked up a 120 grit and a 220 grit, and they're specifically for drywall work. So this one's fine. This is very fine, and you can get it in 80 grit, various different sizes of abrasive. So you can see what this is. It's just a fiberglass mesh screen with the abrasive attached to it. And the great thing about it is, as you're sanding, and as that joint compound tends to build up in the area here, all you have to do is take a blade of some kind, and I run it back through here, and you can knock that accumulated dust out of there. So it basically gets you back to where you have a brand new piece of sanding material to work with very quickly and very easily. So I really recommend these. You can find these at Lowe's, Home Depot, any of these big box stores that have building and construction supplies, and just go ahead and use this. It does a great job. You just really just go at it and sand it. You get something down like 180 grit or 120. It's very aggressive, and you can really cut that joint compound down to a smooth surface very quickly. So that's what I use in all of this. I've used it for the whole room. I've been using this one for probably 10 or 15 years. They just seem to last forever. It does have a nice cushiony foam area here, so it really is designed well for doing this job. Once you get it sanded down and once you've smoothed it with the wet sponge here, I go ahead and, I've shown you my painting in the past when I did the curved backdrop on the module, and I just used this small 6-inch sponge roller. And you can get these again at the paint department in any of those hardware stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. And then they make these little plastic trays where you can put your paint in here, get it on, and then roll it in order to get the excess off. And then you just roll that sucker right on there, and it gives you a really nice, smooth finish. So it allows you to quickly apply a paint job to your layout. So I'm going to go ahead, and I haven't painted the backdrop yet, so I'm going to do that. I'm not going to waste your time by showing you how to do that. It's sort of like watching grass grow as far as I'm concerned. Now, one thing I want to talk about briefly is setting up to take photographs for backdrops, because it does require a little forethought and a little bit of equipment. Now, you can use just about any camera, but you do have to have some kind of stable base, because what you're going to be doing is taking multiple shots of a scene that you're going to be able to stitch together later in photo processing software. And most of them have a capability for making panoramas, and that's what you're basically going to be doing. So in order to do that, you need to be able to shoot at the same level all through the whole scene. So one of the best things you can do is to have a tripod like I've got here. And that allows me to then take a shot, move it, take a shot, move it, take a shot, and so on until I get the whole scene recorded with a small amount of overlap between each one of those shots that I take. And that way the photo processing program can overlap those and blend them together without any problem and give you a nice long photo to be used as a backdrop. Now, one thing I do recommend, if you have access to it, use a good tripod. And one thing I have here on my camera is, and I'll bring this out here for you to look at, it's a little bubble level. And that allows me to make sure that the camera is perfectly level all the way through the whole scene. So that'll make it a lot easier in the long run to be able to stitch it together. So you could even take the camera in your cell phone and set it up on a fence post or whatever, the top of your car, a wall, or whatever you have, and move it around. But you do need something stable so that you're going to stay at essentially the same level throughout the entire set of photographs that you're going to be taking. And then you just take the photos that you've taken and process it in your photo processing software. I use a combination of Adobe Photoshop, a very old version I've had for about 10 years now, as well as a program called Affinity Photo, which is a competitor to Photoshop, but it's relatively inexpensive. I think the Macintosh version that I have cost me $50. And it's pretty good. They have quite a range of videos here on YouTube to be able to show you different capabilities. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the photograph that I'm going to be using that I created using this technique. And this is what I have here. This photograph here, the paper is 13 inches by 19, and the photograph, when pieced together, is about 32 inches long. So to give me a photo backdrop section that will be 32 inches long, this piece connects right here, and I'll show you how that works later. Now, one thing you'll note, I've got a nice blue background here behind the trees. Now, this background is not the original sky when I took this photograph. Instead, I went ahead and using Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, and you don't have to use Photoshop. There's lots of other photo processing programs out there. I went ahead, painted my backdrop here in the train room, took a photograph of the backdrop, fully lit, and brought that into Photoshop. And then I took out the actual background that was there and replaced it with a plain blue sky using the same color as the paint that I used on the backdrops here in the layout. So why did I do that? Well, when it comes to cutting this out, there's two ways to go about it. You could go ahead and create a 12-inch high photograph, cut it out, and paste it to the wall. What I prefer to do is actually cut along a line right along the tree line here. Now, one thing you'll note here, there's a lot of these little trees that stick up on the tree line. And those are the kind of things that add a touch of reality. Because if you go through and you cut right on the tree line and give a nice smooth edge, that does not look very good when you put it up on the wall. So I've got this nice blue sky here that matches the blue paint that is on the backdrop on the layout. And then I cut along the tree line, leaving just a fraction of an inch of blue sky attached to the trees. And what that does is when I then glue it to the wall, you won't be able to see the edge of the trees. You'll still preserve these little bits of trees sticking up, and it just blends in perfectly with the actual sky that I've painted on the wall. So that's how I go about doing that. That's how I use it. And I'll show you that in a little while when we go about installing this on the layout. What I'm going to do right now, though, is take an X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to trim all along the tree line here, leaving, a 1/16 of an inch or so of blue sky right along the margins, so that when I do attach it to the wall, it's just going to blend in perfectly. Now, one thing I do want to point out is about printing these out. Now, you might be able to take it somewhere like Walmart, where they do poster prints and can do that for you fairly inexpensively. I just happened to, at one time in the past, was very, very much into landscape photography. So I have a photo printer still that will print 13 by 19 inch photo prints for me and gives very good archival quality prints. What I did for some other work that I did here on the layout was I actually saved the file as a JPEG and took it to Staples. And Staples is an office supply store here in the United States. And I'm sure you have the same thing over in various other countries around the world. But at Staples, they have the ability to print out photos for you. They can print out banners, all kinds of things. And in one case, I had them print out a piece, I think it was about 8 feet long, and I was able to get that printed on vinyl. So that makes a great way of doing a photo backdrop. Go ahead, get it printed out from them on vinyl. They can do it on paper, and it was reasonable. But there's just a lot of other places, print shops, all kinds of places like that these days can now do these kind of photo prints for you. So, and you might even be able to do it at home on your inkjet printer. If it's good at printing out photos, you can probably piece some things together. So what I want to do now is go ahead. I put a brand new blade in my X-Acto knife. So I want to go ahead and start cutting here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to run a line here along each edge to remove the white margin. And you want to just cut right along the green there, so that you don't leave any white. It's probably going to take 2 passes to clean this, to get a clean cut edge here. There. Okay. So yep, there's nothing there. Okay, let's do the other side. Make 2 passes and see if we can get it cut. Yep, there. Good. I'm going to get out my yardstick so I can start making these long cuts. Okay, we got that one. And now let me get this piece right here done. Got to come around this way. There we go. Set that one aside a second. And we'll get this one done right here. I tell you what, I don't need to do that last piece because I'm going to cut right along here. So let's go ahead and start doing that right here. I'm going to start, my yardstick out of the way, and I'm just going to start bringing it along here. It gets very tedious doing this. Like that. There we go. So you can see the outline of the blue sky here, where I've left it intact, and that's going to disappear really. As you can see here, when it's placed against the blue background, that line just basically fades on you. You don't even see it. Okay, so that's the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and do this other one off camera, as I've shown you the first one. And that's what it looks like, and we'll go ahead and proceed. Okay, so I finished cutting out both pieces, and you can see the little tiny bit of blue sky that I left. And can you tell where they join together now? Let me show you. Right there. So it's possible to get these so that they match up so well that you really can't see the separation line. If I can get them back there. There we go. So that separation line is right through here. So I've got this ready to be installed. Let's go ahead and let me show you first how what I use for the adhesive. Okay, so here's what I use for attaching photo backdrops to the layout. It's 3M Super 77 multi-purpose adhesive. And this is commercial strength. It dries very quick and very clear. So what I basically do is, and I'm going to have to do this outside because I don't want this stuff all over the place. So I just take and put these down on a piece of cardboard, this side, you know, the back side up, and then give it a light, even spray. And I suggest, you know, spray a couple of things first. Do a couple of test sprays with this, just so you get a feel for how it does spray. But spray it all over the back, and then you can take that inside and just apply it directly to the wall with light pressure, and then wipe it with a soft cloth, like an old t-shirt, something like that. And that way you won't scratch your photograph. And then you're good to go. This stuff will last for years as far as holding these prints on the wall. I have prints that I installed 5 years ago now that are still on the wall and haven't peeled or anything at all. Also, if you ever need to remove these, you can hit these with a hairdryer on the high setting. And as you apply the heat, just get the edge of the print somewhere and lift it up slightly. And as you heat, it will go ahead and lift off. So you can take it off and you can put it back. It is not easily repositionable. Matter of fact, you do not want a spray adhesive that is easily repositioned because it will tend to peel off of the wall by itself. You want something commercial strength, it's going to hold, but if you hit it with some reasonable amounts of heat from a hairdryer, it is going to loosen it. And then you can, you can peel it right off, do whatever you need to do, and you can actually reinstall that same print in the same position or elsewhere if you need to. So it's a very good product as far as I'm concerned. I picked this up, I think got it at Lowe's. You know, most of your big box stores and any hardware store that carries paints and adhesives and the like would have this in stock for you. You can probably order it from Amazon. I'm not going to guarantee it, but it's fairly easy to find. And this is what I recommend. Okay, let's go ahead and move it over to the wall, and we'll go ahead and get these installed. I took the photos outside and sprayed them with the Super 77. So now I'm going to go ahead and install them right here in this area. So let me go ahead. I'm going to put the long piece in first because that one will be the most difficult to work with, and then the shorter one should pop in after that. So let's go ahead and get that in here. Okay, there we go. And we'll go ahead and get that one smoothed down. Now I'm going to fit the second one. This really is the critical part here, trying to get it lined up perfectly before you make that final lay. There, okay. There. Okay, got it there. Press it into place here. I think it went in fine. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit for you, and we'll take a closer look at it now that it is installed here on the layout. Okay, there we go. Now, so a train coming around there, that's what they'll see. And in this area here, I'm going to go ahead and put a field of tall grass in there, maybe a pasture, that will blend right into the grasses in the scene itself here. And as I said, you can't see that line there at the point where the trees meet the backdrop because I used that light blue sky to allow them to blend in completely. So that's how you go about creating your own photo backdrops from photos that you take out in the area where you're modeling or somewhere nearby. That's it for this video, and have a great weekend. We'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guide. Bye now.